Okay, I don't get tea drinkers. I don't understand it. Why do you do it? What do you get out of it? It's just a bunch of leaves in hot water. And then you get so obsessed with it. Oh, I need it with a dash of milk and 1 sugar. Oh, I need 1.5 sugars, milky. Oh, you need to leave the tea bag in for a certain amount of time. I like it strong. What? I don't get it. I don't drink tea. Every month from Sri Lanka, without fail, when I was growing up, a crate of the stuff would turn up. Loose leaves, tea in packets from Sri Lanka, and we would have to drink it. So when I got to the stage where I could say no, I said, no, I don't want to drink tea anymore. And I haven't drunk any tea since. In well over 25 years, I've not had a cup of tea. But my next guest is an artist who loves tea. I don't think I would be in any way controversial by saying she's obsessed with tea and the art of tea drinking, and how tea invariably links different communities across the globe. Her name is Sadia Ur-Rehman, and she's with me right now. She has been putting together tea parties. Is that right, Sadia?
That's correct.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, where does this obsession for tea come from?
It probably comes from my parents and being yay high and drinking tea over breakfast. My mother used to make us a traditional cup of chai, and me and my siblings would start our day that way, and it's been ingrained from a very young age. Okay,
and lots of Asians go through that similar morning ritual. You've taken it somewhere else.
I have, that's correct. I know lots of my friends who have started their day that way. My grandfather starts his day that way. Lots of members of my family do, and it's just become a very, very, very important part of my ritual.
Why do you think tea is so important to the Asian community?
It's really interesting. I think there's something quite safe and comforting about tea. There's something quite social about tea. It really does bring people together. You know, you can have a nice chat over a cup of tea, and that's kind of where the idea for my tea parties has come from as well. And I also think it's really interesting how tea is quintessentially an English thing that has travelled to lots of different places, and we drink it because of the English and the British.
Really? So we weren't drinking this stuff before?
We were, but the British made it huge in India with the India Tea Association, and that was a British company, and they weren't very happy about tea, the way that tea was drunk in India, with the chaiwalas putting a little bit of sort of spices and cardamoms and things like that, and really putting lots of milk and sugar, because lots of tea leaves weren't used. But this is now chai, and it's drunk worldwide, and that was because the British really sort of, well, not just introduced it, but really made it quite big in India and other places as well.
If you don't have a cup of tea, does it affect your mood?
I'm really mardy. I'm very, very grumpy. I have to start my day with a cup of tea.
This is bizarre to me, I have to say. Now, tell us a little bit about this project that you're doing.
Okay, so the project is a project called A Local Dialogue, and I have hosted 16 tea parties since the start of 2011.
Wow.
It all started at a place called Valentine's Mansion, which is out in Redbridge, so out in Zone 4, out of London. And I was their artist in residence, and they were looking for an artist to engage the local community. And what I then decided to do was bring together my love of people and tea and communities, and host a series of international tea parties. So that's where the project sort of spurred from and where it began. I hosted 6 international tea parties. There was traditional English. There was 2 traditional English. I did a South Asian tea party, serving up masala chai and pink Kashmiri tea.
How did the masala chai go down with people who weren't used to tea, who loved a nice English breakfast tea?
I think what was really nice about some of these tea parties were people were not just meeting and exchanging stories, which I'll come on to tell you more about. Yeah. They also were taking part in new tea customs and learning about how tea is drunk from different places.
Because in Japan, it's a real ritual, isn't it?
It is, and in China as well. So I also do a Chinese tea party where I actually get somebody external in, a authentic Chinese person, to come in and do a Chinese tea ceremony, which is really beautiful. So
what do they do in it? Is it quite difficult to describe?
It is quite difficult. I'd suggest Googling it.
Yeah.
Googling it into
It's not
YouTube.
something you could do every morning, presumably, is it?
No, and it's quite lengthy, but very beautiful. And there's a ceremony involved with some music. And
all for a cup of tea?
Yes. All for a cup of tea.
I always see tea as like the Jewish equivalent of chicken soup. That people just think it can sort out any problem. You're just like, oh, don't worry about that, love. Let's go and have a cup of tea. Oh, what you need is a cup of tea. I mean, you hear these things, you go, no, probably need an ambulance.
I agree. There's many famous quotes about tea drinking and what tea can do.
Yeah, it's not superhuman, is it? It doesn't give you superpowers.
I will disagree with you there.
Well, okay.
I will disagree with you there.
Okay, well, look, we'll come back and find out some of the stories that go on when you get people together to drink tea in a little while. I'd like to know from you, how do you drink your tea? I know it sounds like a bit of a boring question, but I'm intrigued genuinely because I don't understand it, why people are so obsessed with tea. Apart from the fact, presumably, there's some kind of drug involved, which means you are genuinely addicted to it. Sukhjit of Derby says, I drink herbal beverage tea without sugar and milk. It's lovely. Without sugar and milk. Sadia's turning her nose up at that. Is that not real tea? Is there a tea snobbery in the world? Are you a tea snob?
I think I might be. I just don't do herbal teas. It has to be proper tea for me with some caffeine.
Wow. Sorry, Sukhjit of Derby, you're not a proper tea drinker if you're drinking herbal tea, according to our tea snob that I have in front of me. 81869 is the text number. What do you think makes a perfect cup of tea? Tell me. You listen to me, Nihal, on the BBC Asian Network. It is 25 minutes past 2. You're listening to me, Nihal, on the BBC Asian Network. Tony from Leicester has texted in saying, Nihal, tea was an old English tradition, mostly enjoyed by the rich and powerful as imported from the British Raj. But today it's common as chips. Put the kettle on and have a chat, gossip. Okay, we're talking about tea because I'm with my guest, Sadia Ur-Rehman, and she is a queen of tea, I would say, in this Jubilee weekend. And final big tea party.
Yes, that took place Saturday the 2nd of June.
Yeah, so just gone, at the Maritime Museum.
At the Queen's House, at the National Maritime Museum, which I think was quite fitting.
Yes,
it was in the Queen's House.
How many people turned up?
We had 25 guests in total.
25 guests, amazing.
And we had a real mix. It was a real mix of diversities, and it was very intergenerational. So we had some 20-somethings there and some 60 plus, and it was just a real breadth of people. It was fantastic.
When you put these parties on, what happens? I mean, what kind of conversations come out of it?
Okay, so, I mean, these particular tea parties, which were called Sadia's Commonwealth Jubilee Tea Parties, I didn't just want to do something that was celebratory and completely pro-monarchy. I wanted to explore the legacy of the Empire and the Commonwealth with these tea parties, and that was kind of my brief. The actual tea parties were linked to the Royal River Power Pageantry and the Thames exhibition at the National Maritime Museum, which is currently on. Right. Now, that exhibition was actually opened by the Queen, and so during the tea parties, what we did was we had a series of games, an icebreaker to break the ice. I split people up. I don't let them sit with their friends. I think it's supposed to be a space for people to meet and share and exchange ideas. So I kind of split them up from their friends or potentially their partners or their brothers and sisters. And they play parlour games that I've set that are facilitated on each table. So one of them was the Queenie's Quiz. So they test each other on their knowledge about the Commonwealth and the Queen and her reign. Another one was a game linked to the Jubilee time capsule, exploring people's memories of the last 60 years of the Commonwealth. Now, what we're actually doing with those memories are we're placing them on a website called the Jubilee Time Capsule, which is a project set up by the Royal Commonwealth Society looking at 60 years of the Queen's reign. So a series of different games where people meet, exchange ideas and discuss a number of different things.
Back to talking about tea, but also about the Queen, because you were lucky enough, Sadia, were you not, to meet the Queen?
That's correct. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh came to Redbridge as part of their Jubilee tour.
Yes.
To Valentine's Park and the Mansion, and the borough hosted a 4-day festival called the London Pride Festival, which was a festival celebrating 60 years of art and design. And they asked me specifically to host a tea party while the Queen was walking around the design marquee.
Wow.
So I got to meet the Queen and the Duke, and it was a really interesting experience. So whilst everybody else was standing on ceremony, a performative piece, my artwork, my tea party itself was taking place, and the Queen and the Duke kind of nipped over and we had we had a wee chat.
It's always interesting, isn't it, trying to explain to people how things other than paintings are art.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do you explain to someone, say your uncle, how a tea party is art?
I find it quite difficult, but
I can imagine. Yeah.
I do. It's the actual performance itself, so people actually become part of the art piece, and that's what I tell them during the tea parties, and I think they really like the idea of that, and that's what I try to explain to family members who, lots of them, I try and engage them and involve them in my artwork, so lots of them have attended my tea parties that I've hosted, so that's how I see my tea parties, and that's the type of work that I do. It's about involving people in the making of art. I think that's really important because I come from a background that most Pakistani women are not artists. You know, when I was growing up, that was the case, and I always was really interested in making art more accessible to communities that don't normally access it. So I like to make people part of the process.
Describe to me how you make the perfect chai. What's your idea of perfect chai?
Okay, so this is my mother's recipe.
Okay.
To make
It's not a family secret, by the way. You're not going to get in trouble. Change the locks before you get home.
Thankfully, she's in Pakistan.
Oh, right, okay,
so
cool.
she doesn't know.
Cool, right.
So to make 2 cups of chai, my mum's way, you would boil a cup of water in a pan. You would add about 3 cardamom pods that are crushed, and you add them in. You sort of let that boil for a bit. Add about 1.5 teaspoons of loose tea.
Right.
Let that boil up a little bit more. Then you'll add about 3 teaspoons of sugar. We
Right.
like it sweet.
Yes.
When that's boiled a little bit more for about a minute or so, you add some milk, and that depends on how dark you like your tea. I tend to add about 1/2 cup of milk to that. Let that all boil up and simmer up. When it rises, you then just put the gas low, and then you literally serve that up.
Wow. That's so much hassle than just going to the fridge, getting some fresh orange juice, putting it in a cup and wandering off for your day.
But it tastes so much better.
Well, I wouldn't know. I've never had any, but it definitely sounds interesting. Ben, who's in Holland, said, I tried introducing my Dutch colleagues to some masala tea that I brought over from Kerala, but they weren't having any of it. I guess my previously forcing them all to try Marmite destroyed any trust in my taste. Worth it for the shocked, sour-faced reactions. There you go.
Wow.
That's the masala chai, though, not the Pakistani version. I don't know if the masala chai has so much sugar in it, probably, knowing anyone from that region. Okay, Sadia, thank you very much. Can people find out more about you online? Find out what you're up to and how they can come to the tea party?
If they check out the website, which is www.localdialogue.com, you can get up-to-date news about my tea parties, developments of the project, and where I'll next be hosting my tea parties. I travel to different locations in London, so please do check me out.
Wicked. Localdialogue.com is what you need to check out. And if you fancy getting together with some people, having a cup of tea and sharing various stories, then that is the one you need to do. If, of course, you could come to London. Any plans to go to Leicester, Birmingham, other places?
Well, I hope to take it global. So whoever wants me over for a cup of tea, invite me, please.
Perfect. Perfect. Sadia, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on the BBC Asia Network.
Thank you.